Welcome. I'm T, and we are the Johnsons. After military life, we settled back in good old South Carolina. One mom, one dad, and three very energized kiddos. Figuring out this thing called life. So, I'd like to invite you on this roller coaster of ours. So, grab a friend, hang on tight, and enjoy the ride. I promise you will not be bored. We aren't perfect, but there's a lot of love around us and a lot of fun. So it's an adventure for us, just like it's an adventure for you. And always remember that everything is a little better with some Carolina love. Hey everybody, so in today's video we are actually going to be making some buttermilk biscuits. I pulled everything out, so my bowl, my wooden spatula, I'm going to use a rolling pin. I also have this, I don't know, this dish that I'm going to use to bake the biscuits in. And moving along, we have our other ingredient. Oh, I don't want to forget, this is actually a cookie cutter, but I felt that it would work just fine as a biscuit cutter, and it's super cute. So I just went ahead and used that instead of hunting down an actual biscuit cutter. So then I have my measuring cups as well as my measuring spoons. Got those right from like the Dollar General. Of course, my buttermilk, the buttermilk for buttermilk biscuits, sort of is in the name. I also will need to use some vegetable shortening, and that's going to help the biscuit sort of stay firm, and it helps with the butter so that it doesn't get too warm. This is my flour. This is actually self-rising flour, so I didn't really need to use, I believe, baking soda in there. A little bit of baking powder, though, is still very much needed. Some salt, just any regular salt, and butter. The key to all of this is for our butter to be super, super cold because we do not want it to be warm. So what I'm actually going to do is I need about 5 1/3 tablespoons of butter, of frozen butter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure that, cut that off, open up the wrapper, lie down some, what's it called? I'm going to lie down some wax paper after I clear up the space, and then I will go ahead, cut that into little pieces, and throw it on into the freezer because I'm going to use the butter. I'm going to take the butter out when I absolutely have to take the butter out, and I want to keep it nice and cold before then. Also, in these biscuit recipes, you don't want to handle the dough too much because you're trying to keep it cold. I have granite countertops. They're cool, but they don't keep it cold like marble, would probably keep my butter cold when I handle it, or my dough cold when I handled it. So, as you see, I'm just putting it on the paper, and I'm going to just take a knife and cut it up. No rhyme or reason. I am not, by any means, a professional knife cutter, knife user, whatever it is that you want to call it. That is not my forte. But, I mean, knock on, I've never cut myself, just like, and I needed stitches, knock on wood. So, I don't even know why I'm over here being This butter is actually indeed very cold. I'm just trying to keep it cold. So it's like it's sort of sticking in a way because it's like holding on for, I guess, dear life. So now that we have our butter in the freezer, I'm going to go ahead, grab my bowl, roll up my sleeves, and do my dry ingredients. The dry ingredients consist of the flour, the salt, the baking powder, um, yeah, flour, salt, and baking powder. So you're going to go ahead and measure those out and add it to the bowl first. So this recipe called for 4 cups of flour. So I just simply, measured out 4 cups of flour. Then I went in, added my salt as well as my baking powder, because you do all of the dry ingredients first. I will try and link the actual recipe in the description below. This is not my own recipe. I got it from the Pioneer Woman cookbook. I love her recipes. They're amazing and they're really easy to follow. Um, so next yeah. So I'm sorry. I'm trying to like get it together. But anyway, after all of the dry ingredients are added to the bowl, you are going to take your wooden spatula or any spatula, anything that you're mixing it with, and just evenly incorporate everything. You want it to mix well. Um, the small amount of salt and baking powder and everything is really going to, it makes a difference. So next, I'm actually going to add vegetable shortening. This is not an ingredient I use all the time, but I do use it in my buttercream icing as well, and this helps with adding a little bit of stiffness. Um, it's almost like butter, but it's not. This is not cold at all. So I'm just gonna scoop that into the bowl, and then it was sticking so bad, and I was like, why is this acting like this? But whatever, we finally got it together. Now I have taken my butter out of the freezer, and we're going to drop that right on into the bowl. Then, see, I don't have like a, I guess like a dough cutter, pastry cutter, or anything like that. So what I'm taking is the wooden spatula, and I am chopping up the vegetable shortening and the butter pieces into the dry ingredients. You want it to look like grainy. You don't want to over chop it up, but you don't really want big chunks of butter. I do it like this with the wooden spoon, with the wooden spatula, I mean, because it keeps me from touching the dough, so it keeps me from warming up the mix, if you know what I mean. So just mix, 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 and I'll mix, 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 because I know I was actually chopping up and mixing that for quite some time. You also really would, you also really want to move quickly, because you don't want the temperature to warm up, because they're not gonna, they're just not gonna be the way that you really want it to be. So, after we have chopped and mixed all of that up, we are then going to add in our wet ingredient, which is the, drum roll please. That was a horrible drum roll, I might add. But we are going to add the buttermilk, which is the star of the entire recipe. You want this dough to be sticky but you don't want it to be too wet and you don't want it to be too dry. It is, you can always add more buttermilk if your dough is not wet enough, but you don't want to keep adding things like flour and salt, and you'll get to messing up the ratios of things very quickly. So just start little by little, add a little amount and just start to gauge it for that consistency of like still pretty sticky. At this point I'm still using the wooden spatula and pulling all of the ingredients together in a merry old fashion. Um, when I finish that, we are going to, we are actually going to clear off the area again and flour our station so that we can roll out the dough. So I'm just going to dust it. I ended up using too much flour, so I just mixed it around the way it is that I needed to mix it around. Um, Also, in case you're wondering, I've definitely washed my hands way before I did any of this stuff. But I'm going to take off the excess, throw that away, dump the dough onto the countertop, and also my counter is very clean before I did this. So I went ahead and added that, and we're gonna, it was still really dry on the bottom. So I just added a little bit more buttermilk, and that seemed to like really do the trick. So now moving pretty quickly with my hands and getting it all together so that I can take my handy dandy little rolling pin and roll it out. Making biscuits is so much fun, but it really can, in fact, be, very messy. Um, it only takes a few ingredients that you probably have already in your house, but it's a nice recipe to have under your belt. You can sweeten them up, you can make them savory. You can do a lot of things with, you know, biscuit dough. So right now I am just smoothing out, like rolling out the dough. You don't want to roll it too thin. If anything, you want to keep it a little on the thicker side for more traditional biscuits. I made mine a little thinner because I'm actually making biscuits to make my husband sausage biscuits and gravy for breakfast on this day. So I'm just doing the biscuits first and then I do the gravy, but he sort of likes to have his gravy sandwiched in between his biscuits. I like my gravy for that to be hearty. I use plenty of breakfast sausage and uh, Mr. Johnson just absolutely loves it. The kids love it. I like it. It's a fast favorite in our house. So it also is really easy to make it completely from scratch. So here I am going in with my, for today, it's called a biscuit cutter. I'm going to go in with my cutter, and I got a little fancy with it. So I used the designed edge to make the cut, but it really actually didn't make too much of a difference in my biscuits after. But no big deal. I don't need to make a whole lot of biscuits for this meal. So I will also be wrapping up that dough real quick to be able to save it. I would normally just make all the biscuits, but the dish that I was using just really wasn't super big, and I didn't feel like wasting, some excess dishes that I really didn't need to waste. So with that, all I did was go and grab some cheap old plastic wrap. Plastic wrap is probably my arch nemesis in the kitchen. It really is very difficult for me to work with, and I do not know why. But oh well, I still won. I still made it. So I just covered it and made sure all of the air was out, flipped it over, and then wrapped it around itself. Pop that right on into the refrigerator until we're going to use it a little later for something else. And I'm going to take my dish. This is also from Pioneer Woman. So is my bowl. If you haven't really realized it, but I am a pretty big fan of the Pioneer Woman. I love her cookbooks. I love her recipes. She's super awesome. Her TV show is bomb. I have tailored my macaroni and cheese recipe off of hers. It's not completely the same, obviously, because then it wouldn't be mine. But she is an amazing cook. Um, I know that there's like an odd number and that's probably bothering you, but when a biscuit first come out, I always taste one to make sure that it's fine. Like really not in a greedy kind of thing, just be like, okay, then yeah, this is good. Biscuits is something that's cheap. Like if you screw it up, you can very much redo it. But I just try it. Then we are just going to simply clean up our mess after we pop them into the oven that was set for, I believe, 350. I just go ahead and knock out the chores of putting everything where, like it needs to go, pantry items in the pantry, um, dirty dishes in the sink, and then I went ahead after I was done with all of that, sprayed down the counters and wiped it down. But that was pretty much it. Here is a picture of the final meal. It was a hit. The Mr. Johnson absolutely loved it, and I was so very pleased with myself and how it all worked out. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy your day. Peace and hair grease.